Welcome to another lesson where we will get acquainted with the concept of action and use action directly in our workflows. First, let's disable the second workflow since we're going to create the third one now. Workflow and create the third workflow. So, what I'm interested in this workflow is the following. We're running a runner on Ubuntu, and the first thing I want to show you something. First, I want to show you the working folder where we are, because when the runner starts, it essentially launches a working directory on the virtual machine. Let's check the path to this working directory. The Linux command pwd will return the path to this directory. The second thing is we'll see what's in our working directory. In Linux, the command ls-a will give us a list of the files we have in our working directory. A very simple workflow that uses two commands. The first one will simply show us the path to the working directory, and the second command will show us the files in that working directory. And we expect that since our GitHub already has some files, for example, an index.html, that this file will be in our working directory. But to jump ahead, I'll tell you that it won't be there. You might get the impression that all these files in the root are our working directory on the virtual machine, but that's not the case. That's why I'm running these commands to demonstrate. Let's push this. Our workflow is starting, and we'll wait for it to finish. Great. Let's open our workflow. The only thing is we didn't change the title, but that's okay. And guys, look, our working directory has the following path. So basically, we have the final folder, GitHub Actions, and in it are the files that are here. But as you can see, there are no files here. So basically, we have the final folder, GitHub Actions, and in it are the files that are here. But as you can see, there are no files here. So we currently have an empty working directory. I used a WordPress plugin action to copy a repository. Now we'll do the same. Use an action to download our repository. GitHub Actions is an automation tool. You can automate as needed. So now we're going to use the same thing. We're going to use an action to download our repository into our working directory. It might seem strange why GitHub doesn't just download it there right away, but there's a logic to it. GitHub Actions isn't just a tool for working with files in a specific repository. It's an automation tool. You can automate it however you want and according to any requirements. So if you need to have the repository files, you have to download them somehow. But by default, they aren't there. We're going to use an action called checkout. It's designed to copy the repository files into our working directory. So I'll attach the link to this action in the lesson materials. A few words about actions. So these are add-ons, these are scripts created by various developers, and they upload them to the marketplace. And by the way, there are currently over 20,000 different actions on the marketplace. These are scripts that can solve absolutely any tasks. Most likely, 99% of the tasks you encounter already have a ready-made action for them. So always make sure to use the search and look for keywords that can be used. In our case, the action checkout will take the files from the repository, drop them into the working directory of the virtual machine, and do it all with just one line of code, guys. So, the author of this action, you see how much work they had to do, writing a lot of lines of code in TypeScript, and also a lot of work went into figuring out the documentation. And we're just going to use it. And specifically in our case, we'll get by with just one line. And let's copy this line from the documentation. Here it is. This line specifies which action to use. Let's go to our workflow process in our current process. And we can add to it right here as the subsequent step in the process. So after the run is complete, we clearly specify the exact keyword uses. But the only thing is that this uses needs to be properly aligned with the given name. Just like that, everything is great. So, the principle of using actions is very simple. In uses, we pass the ID of a specific action. In our case, we also include the version, which will indicate which version of the script to use. The current one is the 4th, and the documentation immediately lists the 4th version. We're basically going to use it. And basically, this line of code will clone the repository into our working directory, which we saw with this command. Let's proceed as follows. We're no longer interested in the path to the working directory. We have the command to list files and copy the repo, and as you can understand, at this point when we show the files, it will be empty. But I'm intentionally leaving it like this so you can see again that it's empty. Then with this line, we use an action that will put those files there, and so the next step is that we can look at the files again. So we add another step, which will simply be called list files. And let's commit this, and then let's just simply copy the necessary files to the repository, and then commit and push them to the repository again. Let's go back to the repository. We go to Actions, and here we see that our files are being copied. We can even go in here. So the job is starting up. These are the logs. All right. The first step is done. The second step, list files and copy repo, is also completed. Let's take a look. We open it, and the command to display files in the working directory is running. As you can see, there's nothing there. Then the action starts, and as you can see, each step in the action is logged here. You can work with these logs. So basically, this step is the action launch. And here's list files. This is our step, and we can already see the Git files, GitHub, and index.html, meaning our action worked successfully. After our step, another step related to this action is already being executed, probably some kind of shutdown or cleanup. But the most important thing I wanted to show you here is that with actions, you can execute various commands. Our task isn't complicated, so we can copy files to the working directory using commands, and we'll do that right now. This action should be used when we need to work with files in the repository. It allows us to pass various parameters, meaning after uses, we use with and pass it variables with values, and this script uses those variables, or rather the values of those variables, to perform certain manipulations. Everything that this specific action can do can be found in this documentation. That was enough for the demonstration. I just needed to show you how to move files in the repository with a single line. I demonstrated that. Now let's get back to our workflow. We're doing it not with actions anymore, but with commands, the same thing. We'll be using git commands because we can download files into our working directories. As you remember, we have git installed on the virtual machine, so we can work with git commands in that working directory. Let's go back here. Remember that YAML allows us to write comments. We can simply comment out this line like this. Next, we write a new step. So this specific step will be to enumerate the files that will show the files in detail before. Because every time we have a job that starts and a new workflow is launched, we always spin up fresh infrastructure. So if you got the impression that we copied the files and they are still there, that's not the case. The moment our job finishes, all that infrastructure is torn down. So we will have a copy file step. The moment our job finishes, all that infrastructure is taken down. So we will have a copy file step. In this step, we will run the next command. We will have a list of commands, so remember to use this symbol. The first step is to initialize Git in the working directory. So here at this step, we are in the working directory. If we type Git in it, it will initialize. Next, we need to link them to our repository. Let's add Git. Remote from a remote location that is quite far away. Now let's copy this link. Guys, we need to do two things here. First, we need to pass some authorization, meaning the login and access token, which we store in dynamic variables. There are system variables as well, and I would also recommend replacing the repository name, which is the login and its ID, with a dynamic variable because right now it's hard-coded. But we can change either the login or the repository ID at any time, and then this code will just stop working. So there's a variable called getCupRepository. This is how you write that variable, and we use it. And here I also need to set the authorization. For authorization, I also use the system variable GitHub actor. And here I also need to set the authorization. And for authorization, I also use the system variable GitHub actor. It will use the author who accesses repository. And I need to set the access token. Now, regarding the access token, every time we run a workflow, GitHub generates an access token for us and creates a secret for it. We'll work with secrets later, but just know that you can access it like this: $sign and 2 curly braces. Then we refer to the secrets, and the keyword is GitHub token. That's it. Now we have a dynamic token in this repository. To continue, execute git fetch origin to update your local repository with changes from the remote. Then switch to the main branch using git checkout main. This ensures you're working on the latest version, which is important for consistency and avoiding conflicts. Basically, this series of commands will clone the repository files into our working directory, and the next step is to run them again and see if our commands worked. Let's check it out. Let's go to the repository and examine it thoroughly. We can even open it and explore it in detail. First, the infrastructure is being set up. Great. Step 1 has been completed. We see it's all empty. Copy files. Let's go in. We can see that it executed our commands, our repository. And now let's take a look at the files. We're getting exactly the same thing. So we've successfully copied the repository files into our working directory, already without actions, but using commands. In this hand, we got acquainted with actions, used one action. We solved a simple problem in 2 ways. One way is using an action, and the second way is using commands. In this case, it commands. So decide for yourselves, guys, which approach you want to use. I recommend using actions because they simplify the work. We had a very simple task, so we were able to solve it easily using git commands. But if the task is more complex, we'll probably have to look for a ready-made action in the marketplace. That's it for this lesson. See you in the next lesson.